Welcome to the Octavius Gould Experience, and I am your host, Octavius Gould. I have the pleasure, the absolute honor of having a guest on this episode that will blow you all away. I like to welcome Larry Kirksey. I call him Coach Kirksey. Coach Kirksey, welcome to this podcast episode. Thank you so much.
Well, I'll tell you what, I am truly excited about doing this with you because, we go way back. And boy, I just, I see you from afar and I see things you've done. And it's been quite impressive. It really has. So,
well, I have to start by saying you mean the world to me as a coach, but more importantly, as a man. And I'll get into your background, but first, I want to make sure that my audience understand our relationship and why this episode is so important to me. You recruited me starting in 1985 to the University of Florida to play for the Florida Gators. You were the running back coach at UF at that time. And I was actually narrowing down my list, I think, to 5 schools. I had just informed Coach Turchetta at Temple University of those 5 schools. And Coach said, we're friends. I love you and your family. I want to introduce you to someone. And one day he showed up at my high school with you, representing the University of Florida, who had not even reached out to me up to that point. And I thought it was ironic because here you have the Temple University coach, the local college, 30 minutes from where I was going to high school. Many of my friends were playing on that team, and I had known Coach Turchetta for about 4 years.
Right.
So I meet you. It's about 3:00 in the afternoon. You wanted to come to the house, meet my parents, get to know me. So I had to call my mom up, who was working for Amtrak in Philly at the time, let her know that the coach from the University of Florida would like to come over. She agreed. By the time we got there, she had fried chicken, macaroni and cheese, and an entire spread ready for you.
I remember. Oh, well, again, Coach Turchetta and I, worked together. I hired him also when I was a head coach at Kentucky State University, but we worked together at the University of Kentucky. So that's how I was able to get in there, and he knew that if he couldn't get him, that he should come with me. So that's why that came about.
Well, before we get into your impressive background, I want to do a service for my audience and just let them know about you and all the impressive things that you've done throughout your career. Now, what many people may not know, because they're thinking of you now as a coach, as I introduced you, that you were actually a pretty great football player back in college, right? I think you went.
Well, and during that time, I could have been better, though. I was okay, but I could have been a better player if I'd known what I know now.
All of that coaching experience will do some good. Now, where did you go to college, Coach?
I went to Eastern Kentucky University, and it's funny. I played as a true freshman, and so I played all 4 years, and then a guy got drafted with the 6th pick overall, Chicago Bears, named Wally Chambers, and so I had a decent year my senior year. I missed 2.5 games because of injuries, but I didn't get drafted, and I didn't have any free agent tryouts. So, ding, 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 that bell went off. Maybe I'm not good enough. So, like many guys, when that happens, what do you do?
Right.
Well, I needed 8 hours to graduate from college. And here I am so I asked the coach, could I be a student assistant? And he said, yes. So I came back and I was in charge of defensive backs and worked with the defensive back coach and scout team, as you know. And I graduated that December. And then I said, I want to coach. I was set in January. I did my student teaching. And I was going to take a high school job, and all of a sudden I get a call to my college coach. He says, Miami University in Ohio is looking for a young African-American coach. I was 23 years old.
Wow.
I went up, interviewed, got the job. That year we finished 10th in the country. So, and Miami of Ohio is known as the cradle of coaches. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Oh,
That's where all the great coaches came from.
coach.
And so
I
that's
did
how.
my first of all, I did my homework. I
Oh,
know
did you?
more about you than you know about me, and you coach me. You know, you look like you're about 45, 50, but I think you started coaching at Miami of Ohio in 1974, if I'm correct, right?
That is correct. Full time. And they taught me, like I said, it's called the cradle of coaches. And we had a great staff. And I'm young and I did all the grunt work, but I coached tight ends and receivers. I had to coach two spots. But I've learned fast, and they took the time to teach me. And that's when my career just kind of kept escalating, getting better and better. And for 2 years there, we were 22-21. We lost to Purdue, Michigan State, and lost to Purdue. Beat Kentucky, Georgia, South Carolina. So teams like that. So I'm pretty good.
And you did a lot of coaching in your backyard, Kentucky. What does Kentucky mean to you? And I asked that question because in preparing for this podcast episode, I did some research and watched some of the podcast episodes you've done with some of your friends in Kentucky. And I can tell that it's a special place in your heart. So what is it that Kentucky means to you?
Well, coming up, Octavius, I'm one of 11 kids. My mom died when I was 3 years old. And the only thing I remember about my mom is I was out on the porch as a kid, 3 years old, throwing rocks into a fan. And all of a sudden, I decided, I'm going to stick my finger in there. So I stuck my finger in there and I started crying. She came out on the porch. She was pregnant with twins at the time. And she said, "What happened?" Concerned. I said, "I stuck my finger in the fan." And she picked me up and just started spanking my butt. But growing up in Kentucky, Octavius, I look at the Asheville, North Carolina, and the floods I went through there. Well, I went through three of those in Kentucky. And so I've had an opportunity to go back recently to Harlan, my home town. And where I grew up, there's 65 families there. And when the floods came the last time in 1977, destroyed all the houses. So they tore all the houses down. They built it up, and they tore down the high school, the black high school that we went to before we integrated in 65. And so all of a sudden, nothing's there historical about Georgetown, where I grew up. They call it Georgetown. It was 65 families. There was 62 black families and 3 white families. We all got along, believe it or not. And we lived in Georgetown. And then when you crossed the bridge to go to Harlem, you were in Harlem. But when you crossed that bridge to come back, you were in Georgetown. And Georgetown had 2 streets. Had Kentucky Avenue, which I lived on, 228 Kentucky Avenue, and Green Street. And the rest of the houses were in alleys, as they call them.
Okay.
But the community, like I said, we all got along, man. And I went back and did this ceremony, me and a friend of mine. And a lot of people came from California, Arizona, Ohio, Michigan, different places to celebrate what we did about commemorizing the high school where we took every graduating class from 1933 to 1963. And every family that lived over there. And we put every name on the plaques. It's unbelievable. It's gorgeous. So for us to do that and to have people come home now and wanted to go see that, it's like a museum now. But coming from Kentucky is very special to me. And Kentucky's always been home to me. And I was there last weekend, believe it or not, for homecoming at Eastern Kentucky University. So I like giving back and like being around the guys. But at the same time, it gave me an opportunity to do the things I've done in life. And, the people in my hometown, I often say it takes a village. And my hometown, the city, and the school that I went to early on, all those people helped nurture me and prepare me for what I had coming toward me in life. So that was awesome.
And if I'm correct, you're now in the Kentucky Hall of Fame, correct?
I'm in several Hall of Fames. I guess you can say in Kentucky. They're looking for people, but Kentucky Pro Football Hall of Fame, Eastern Kentucky University a couple of times. My high school, the former black high school, and it's great to be recognized, but at the same time, uh, I often give credit where credit is due, and to the people that were surrounded me during that time.
So you go from Kentucky and you end up in Gainesville in the early 80s,
Mhm.
coaching greats such as Neil Anderson and John L. Williams. What was that experience like?
Well, it was well when I got the job at Florida. You'll like this story.
Mhm,
A guy named Charlie Pell hired me,
mhm.
and I went down for the interview, and we played racquetball, and I beat him, of course. You know, I didn't know if that was good or bad, but I wanted to beat him in racquetball. So we were sitting there talking, and he said, Larry, because I had never coached running backs before. I had coached tight ends and wide receivers,
Mhm.
and he's getting ready to coach quarterbacks at Miami of Ohio. And I left and went to Kentucky. And so he said, how do you coach thoroughbreds? And I started, this, and that. It's all bull crap. He said, you get them to the gate and you let them run.
Mhm.
And I just remember the first day that when you finally became eligible to practice, and the first day of practice, you came out there and you were a thoroughbred. You ran through guys. It was just unbelievable that first day of practice when we had a chance to see you on college campus do the things you did. But it was unbelievable. But to coach those guys and coach the University of Florida, it made me a better coach
Mhm.
because now I'm coaching offense, running backs, but pass protection, run blocking, and everything else. So that helped jumpstart my career also.
Yeah, thinking back to those Florida days, it's special in my heart because one, it was a first opportunity for me to be away from home. And you promised my parents that you would treat me like a son. And from day one, you treated me like a son. And that's why I have so much admiration for you. And you don't know this at this point in time. Once I got into leadership in corporate America, there are so many different leadership styles that a professional can adopt. One
Hmm.
of the styles that I adopted was a style that I acquired from you as my coach. Because in leadership, having things such as emotional intelligence is mission critical to have that empathy for people. But at the same time, there's a level of executive presence that you need, whether you're a business leader or a leader in the sports world. And I can remember in 1986, maybe game two or three, you told me if I didn't shave my goatee, that I wasn't starting.
Yeah, well, I probably did. Did you
But
start?
I shaved the goatee. But
Uh,
those are the things that, as a young man, I can remember to even today. I was 18 at the time, and here I am, 56 today. And I can remember some of the lessons that you taught me, the values that you instilled into me at that point in time. But I took away that leadership style of yours, that ability to garner respect by your actions and to be coach-like and a developer of people on the playing field, but more importantly, off of it as well. And just the caring that you showed to not just me, everyone that you coached, and even people who weren't necessarily in the running back group, just the level of respect that they have for you. So, how did you, before we get into those Gator days, or where did you acquire your coaching style that to me is just so impressive?
well, thank you so much for saying that, man. I really appreciate it, Octavius. Um, as a player, I never liked getting yelled at.
Mhm.
I never liked getting cussed at. Um, it's about communicating. Remember John L. Williams, that guy, that name.
Oh, yes.
Uh, Sometimes in coaching, they call it hard coach. You got to coach guys hard.
Mhm.
And I yelled at John L. Williams one time. He would sit down. And I said, "What's up, John?" He said, "Coach." He said, "You don't have to yell at me. Just tell me what you want me to do." Wow. So all of a sudden, I said, "Hmm." So, and I didn't like being yelled at, but in today's coaching, and I heard it, I heard Nick Saban talk about it recently.
Mhm.
And Octavius, I like to think that do you remember Trevor Mills?
Yes. Yes.
Kevin Mills was at the University of Florida last weekend, and he said to me, he said, Coach, even though you didn't coach me, you were my coach because when I had a bad day, you would always pick me up, communicate, and talk to me. I think in coaching, and Nick Saban said this, and I think I've been this guy my whole career. I can tell you stories about Nick Saban too. They're good. But Nick Saban said there's two kinds of coaches. He said that's transactional and that's transformational. And I like to think, since what you just said, I've been a transformational coach my whole career. At Miami Ball, the guy said the same thing
Right.
because I was 23 years old and I fit right in the room. I could relate, I could communicate, but they respected me. It's funny, I used to smoke cigarettes back in the day. And at 23, I was still smoking, and the tight end and I smoking cigarettes. And the next day, I ran for smoking. He said, "How you gonna run me for smoking? You smoking with me?" I said, "I'm the coach." But transformational coaches are those coaches that can communicate, and it's all about what's best for the young man.
Right.
And I've always been about that, Octavius. And you've heard the term transactional, and those kind of coaches are the guys, whatever you can do for me. I mean, that's the bottom line. Do it my way or the highway. Well, that's not the way I'm built. I wasn't structured that way. I was always a communicator. And if I yelled at you, and I can tell you some stories about Jerry Rice and Tito, and if I yell, the whole team would stop and stare and say, "Oh crap, somebody pissed a little man off." Well, because I just pull them. I want to send you a video. You'll see me hugging guys, coaching guys.
Right.
But if I ever yell, they said, "No, something's wrong." But for him to yell, something's wrong. So, but I've enjoyed my career, but it's all about communication and trusting guys and have a commitment to them. And I've always been that way, Octavius, my whole career. And
And I can recall you yelling at me at least once in front of about 85,000 people. My mom remembered it too, because after the game, she was shocked because she knew all about your demeanor. So she knew I must have messed up really bad.
yeah, well, that's the way I'm going to yell. If we talk about it, and like I say, I see guys. I watch football a long time now, all the time, and I see coaches yell. I see some coaches that don't yell, and some coaches don't correct players. But I was all about hands-on, I guess you could say. I was a hands-on guy, and let's find a way to get this done, and let's fix this. So. And I think that's why I've been able to survive so long in this business, and I've been very blessed and fortunate to coach a lot of great players. As yourself.
We talked about emotional intelligence and having empathy. That empathy that you have showed up one day when I decided to transfer from the University of Florida my sophomore year.
Mhm.
I can recall being in the boardroom. We had the president of the university at the table, the head coach, the recruiting coordinator, and maybe three other administrators at the table, and yourself. And when I made that decision to transfer, we walked down the steps. So the question that I have, and this is something that we laughed about at the beginning of the call, is why did you cry when I made that decision, Coach?
Well, because I knew you were a good football player, and I knew that you were leaving for the right reason, but at the same time, I was in the processes of leaving also. And like I said, I had brought you there, and here I was. I'm going to the University of Pittsburgh now, and and sometimes you make decisions to go other places and do other things, but I felt like you were there because of me, and I appreciated that. And yeah, it's a great university also, academically and football wise, but at the same time, I brought you there, and I felt responsible for you. So that's why.
I appreciate it. Well, I'll let everyone know I cried too. So we both cried. But I was coaching some VPs a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling them about this podcast episode with you and how much you meant to me and how excited I am to bring you on. And I thought about that moment and the tears that we allowed to flow when I made the decision to transfer. but it has greater meaning. When you think about the fact that that was 1987, here it is, 2024, and you and I are sitting on this podcast episode reminiscing about our relationship that was built on trust, built on mutual admiration, mutual respect. And you get so many people, not just in sports, but even in corporate America, that will leave a company and part for whatever reason they chose to do so, and they sever relationships. So for you, what did it mean, or what does it mean to be sitting here today, decades later, having this conversation, even though we stopped working together in 1987?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this to you, Octavius. Like I said earlier, I've been truly blessed to coach a lot of great players, Hall of Famers, and but even you, and we're just talking about being recruited. There's 5 concepts that I believe about the game of football, about the game of life, that I truly believe in, and I just know in recruiting you, and once I got you to the University of Florida, the most important thing was, again, is alignment in life. Who you align, you run a company, and you have to align yourself with certain people. In this podcast, you have to align yourself with somebody to help you get the job done, to promote it, to present it. And it's all about being aligned. And in the game of football, if you can't get lined up, you can't play. Right. Think about that one. I mean, today's games, you see all these people on the sideline holding up signs and this and that, and kids don't go to the huddle. Well, in the NFL and a lot of college football, you go to a huddle, and they got to call, tell you where you're going to go. So that's alignment. So you have to go figure out where I'm going to get aligned, and you alignment from that standpoint. Then you talk about your assignment. Well, if you don't know your assignment, you can't play. Mm-hmm. If you can't get lined up, let's say you get lined up, you don't know your assignment, can you play?
No.
No, you can't play. So the other thing is I often talk about is technique. And so it's alignment, assignment, technique. If I'm supposed to go outside and I go inside, to get the guy, then that doesn't work. So again, alignment, assignment, technique. So, and the fourth one is the execution. If you can't get lined up, you don't know your assignment or technique, how can you execute?
Exactly.
Okay. And the last one is finish. And what I do, Octavius, a lot of times, and not to, I like using those analogies, also use them in life. Mm-hmm. And I go back to my favorite story in the Bible. It's about Moses. And in the book of Exodus, chapter 3 through, I think, 21. And Moses on the mountain after just wandering around, and all of a sudden, God said, "How want you to do this?" All of a sudden, he said, "I can't do that because he has a speech impediment." All this stuff, giving excuses, and so he finally says, "Okay." He said, "I'll tell you what." God said, "I'll align you with Moses, with your brother Aaron, and the elders." So that's no big deal. He said, "Your assignment is to what? Go down to where? Pharaoh, tell my people, get my people." And then he said, the technique, that rod that you have in your hand, you perform those techniques there, and you execute them, and then you finish. So if you go back and my speak at Vanderbilt, Clemson, whatever, I said, you guys go read about that story. Mm-hmm. Because all those things about alignment, assignment, technique, execute, and finish are right there in the Bible. Right. It's the same thing. It's the same thing in life. And so I often will use that, but at the same time, it's also about trust. It's about commitment. It's about having a vision, so all that comes into play. And when I think about my life, without all those things, I wouldn't have had the success that I've had. And sometimes commitment, I've coached a couple Hall of Famers. One's in the Hall of Fame, and the other one is a writer now. They couldn't figure it out early on. They wanted to straddle the fence, and one had one leg in the boat and one leg out of the boat, but they figured it out. And because of the commitment they decided to be a part of, they figured it out and they had success doing the things they had to do. But that's just part of it, Octavius. Is just, I I enjoy coaching. I enjoy mentoring still. A guy called me today, he's a high school coach, and get ready to go to maybe Morehouse to coach.
Okay.
I know the head coach down at Morehouse, and but anytime I get a chance to go back and visit with the young guys, young coaches, I want to do that. But I also talk about the 5 concepts of football in life, and talk about the commitment and the divisions and things like that. So, and it's the same thing I would have said to you. Like you had a vision of playing in the NFL. We all did as kids, right?
Right.
And so did I. But when I realized I didn't get drafted, no free agent tryout, I said, I got to figure this thing out. And so I knew that, something else I wanted to do, and I pursued it just like you pursuing what you're doing. And because of it, you had a vision. It's worked out.
Exactly. Exactly.
So,
And after you wiped those eyes, when I decided to transfer, you had the opportunity to coach who I think is one of the greatest running backs to ever lace them up. Someone who I keep in touch with even today, Emmitt Smith. What was it about Emmitt that made him so great? What did you see in him that was prevalent even before he got to the NFL?
his tenacity, his vision, his power, he was just a natural, I guess you can say. You were a natural running back. You were explosive, you were powerful, but he had the uncanny ability to slide in and out and run through tacklers and leverage and all those things right there. I mean, he had the whole package. And the thing about it is he had speed. And he's like Jerry. You never saw him get caught many times
Right.
from behind.
Right.
Once he got in open, and they said the same thing about Jerry. Not many people caught Jerry. I saw him get caught one time.
We're gonna talk about Jerry. People may not know if they tuned in late who Jerry is, but we're gonna talk about Jerry for sure.
Okay, but Emmitt, like I said, he was a natural, and I just think he had that innate sense that he was born to do what he was born to do, and that to be a football player. I mean, he really was, and I just think he used his God-given ability and skills to be one of the greatest of all time.
Yes. It's interesting because before we started the episode, you and I talked about another teammate of mine who you encountered a couple years ago, Daryl Thompson, and I told you that Daryl was my podcast guest last week.
Right.
So I keep in touch with Emmitt. I keep in touch with Daryl, and two of the most humble professionals, men that I've ever met in my life, both first-round draft picks in the same NFL draft in 1990, Emmitt to the Cowboys, Daryl to the Packers, but two of the most humble, impressive men that I've ever encountered in my life.
Well, and that's why they went where they went to, because not only were they great football players, but they're humble. I mean,
Exactly.
I told you I just met Daryl, man, and we hit it off right away. In fact, I still get emails from him from the little things that he's got going on in Minneapolis. So in fact, I just got one yesterday, I think. So that's pretty cool. And
Yes.
like I said, people with those backgrounds that are willing to help young people, and that's what he's doing in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Is to help, is give back. It's not enough of us doing that. Some of us are doing it, but it's not enough of us doing it. And my biggest thing right now is that I want to get down to the core of the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, because there's not a lot of men down there.
Right.
When we think about it, and they're screaming for help. And so I'm in the process of trying to put some things together to facilitate young kids, in groups that can't go to these camps, of going to them and doing things with them.
Right.
So
yeah, it's awesome because I'll tell you a story. Maybe about 5 years ago, I was doing some work on my laptop, and Emmitt and I had bumped into one another a few years prior to this situation. And I opened up my emails, an email from Emmitt just saying, "Hey, I came across your business card that you gave me. Just wanted to check on you and see how you're doing."
Oh, wow.
So when you talk about someone with character, folks like Daryl Thompson, Emmitt Smith always come to mind, and which is the reason I'm fond to have played on the same teams as those gentlemen. But now that leads me to the fact that you left UF, you went to Pittsburgh, but you ended up at Alabama.
And up to Alabama.
Won a
After a
national
year,
championship, if I'm correct, right?
that's right. That's right. It's funny because I was at Pittsburgh and I was supposed to be groomed for the offensive coordinator, and then Coach Godfrey got fired. So Coach Hackett got the job, who was the offensive coordinator. And so I was down in Florida recruiting. I called Paul and I said, Paul, the young man's coming. And he said, great. He said, I had a phone call today from Gene Stallings. I said, I don't know Gene Stallings.
Mhm.
And he said, well, he wants to talk to you about a position on his staff. Uh, I said, okay. So I'm going to be in Birmingham next week recruiting. So I called him up. He said, well, why don't you come down to Tuscaloosa and visit with me? I said, okay. So I went down to Tuscaloosa and I was in his office for 7 minutes. I'll never forget. He said, the job is yours if you want it. And I played hardball. I said, Coach, I said, can I have 48 hours to think about it?
Mhm.
So on my way back to the airport, to fly back to Pittsburgh, I called my wife and told her. And I said, he offered me the job. And I told him I need 48 hours to think about it. She said, you dummy, take the job. So I took the job, but Octavius, I know why he called me. He didn't know me. He called me because of a guy named Charlie Pell, who was at the University of Florida, who hired me, but was an Alabama graduate and played for Coach Bear Bryant while Coach Solomon was there. And so they must have talked, and he must have said, hey, I got a running back coach you need to hire. And that's why I went to Alabama. I mean, that's the truth, and that's unbelievable. But so I'll go to Alabama, and the first year there we go 0-3, first three ball games. They're defending SEC champs. But thank God Vanderbilt came to town. And Vanderbilt looked better than we did getting off the bus. But we beat them like 55-0 when we beat Tennessee, we beat Auburn. And next 3 years, we went like 22-1-1, something like that, won a national championship. And I go out and interview for the 49ers one of those years for the running back job. And I don't get it. So I'll come back to Alabama. And so the next year, they call back again and say, hey, we want you to come out and coach receivers, Coach Shanahan. I said, I was just out there. He said, well, you got to come back. I told Coach Stallings, and he said, man, you were just out there. You know, he didn't want me to go. He didn't want to lose me. So he said, dag nabbit, go ahead and go. So I went back out there, and I got the job. And so I came back to Alabama. And so I never forget, as I'm getting ready to leave, some of the coaches said, what are you going to teach Jerry Rice? I said, I'm going to teach him the same thing I taught everybody else I've coached. I'm going to coach him. And so I'll go out there, and thank goodness, I had Jerry and John Taylor and a lot of great players. But Jerry was very, very unique. Without a doubt, the greatest of all time. Tom Brady, yeah, he's great, but he didn't do the things Jerry did. Nobody could catch a slant, go inside or across the field like Jerry did. And he is the all-time greatest. He really is. And I've been blessed to coach a lot of great players. But yeah,
Yes,
I
you
would say
have.
he is the best.
Yes, you have.
He
Someone's
is good.
we talked about the fact that someone was looking down on me. Someone was looking down on you. I think you've had a few people looking down on you because you've been blessed, coach, to be the coach of some incredible athletes, but at the same time, incredible men, people who were the epitome of excellence on the field, but off the field as well. So it's 1994, if I'm correct, when you got that job with the 49ers.
Mhm.
So I'm going to backtrack just for a second. And
Okay.
you mentioned that the folks at Alabama asked you, Coach, what is it that you're going to teach Jerry Rice? So here you are, a college coach with an impressive collegiate resume, but now you're in the pros. You're dealing with multi-millionaires, people with more money than the coaches. How did you make that transition? Because I'm quite sure there had to be an adjustment or a way in which you had to adapt your style
Hmm.
to align with the big boys, if you will.
Okay. But that's a good question. But go back and think about what we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
Transformational. You know, I was there at a time when, yeah, he was good and he was going to be good whether I was there or not. But it's about communication, about teaching. Uh, Jerry and I, we hit it off right away. I'll never forget, this is a true story. We go up to training camp up in Rockland, California. And it's how we practiced 3 times a day back then, believe it or not. So we come home and we will open up with the Oakland Raiders on Monday Night Football, 1999. And so that week of practice, before we play the Raiders, Jerry drops a pass in practice. No big deal. He's human, right?
Right. At
Several
least
plays later, he drops another one. So I said, whoa. So this is a true story, and I tell this a lot of times. So get ready for it, okay? Don't mean to scare you, but get ready. So he walks by me, and he whispers to me, he said, Coach, if I drop another pass, you get in my ass. Just like that. He whispered that to me. So I said, well, first of all, he ain't gonna drop no more. About 5 plays later, he drops another pass. So I'm saying, what am I going to do? What am I going to say? So all of a sudden, here he comes back. What's going? And so the GM and this other guy standing right next to me. And they said, you little shit, you've been here 3 months and you jumped in the best receiver's ass of all time. So I walked by the huddle a few minutes later. I hit Jerry in the butt. I said, hey, Jerry, thanks. That's the relationship we had. But so from there on, I could tell Jerry, I talked to him, and I say, Jerry, now take your time, do this, do that, do that. And all of a sudden, he goes up there and rushes it, and I'll say something to him. He said, "Damn it, Coach, I took my time." I start laughing. He'll walk back and say, "Coach, I apologize. I didn't take my time." But there's stories like there's other stories, man, I could tell you just blow you away about this guy, and but he always back and said, "Hey, Coach, you were right."
Right.
And but that's that relationship that we had, transformational, and we got along, and he made me a good football coach. He made me a good football coach, and
When you think about it, Coach, a lot of leaders, again, whether you're in corporate America or in the athletic world, they have a challenge coaching a superstar and maintaining that level of balance so that you don't put your other team members in a bad spot. Everyone wants to be treated well. Everyone wants to be treated the same. So how did you balance the way in which you went about coaching and treating Jerry Rice compared to the other athletes on the team?
well, when they heard me do that, okay, that's one of those times when everybody's so Terrell Owens, uh, he fell asleep in the meeting one night right before the season started. He had bad practice that day earlier, and I look over and he's asleep. I gave Steve Young a heart attack because, like I said, I don't yell, but I yelled that night, and Bill Walsh was in the room, and it woke Terrell up. The next week we played Tampa, and Jerry tore his knee up. So all of a sudden they said, "Who are you going to put out to replace Jerry?" And it was Terrell's second year. I said, "I'm going to put Terrell at Z, and you got to be smart to play there." We won 13 games in a row. And what transpired there, Octavius, is that Terrell would come up to my office after that encounter that we had that night of sleeping. From then on, every time I moved, we were joined at the hip. He came up every day just to sit down and talk, to watch film or whatever. And all of a sudden, we had a relationship. And that carried on for several years. And finally, I won't tell you, there's some stories and some things it's a good story, but I won't tell you. No, I'll tell you. This one coach said, yeah, why would Terrell come up to see you all the time and don't say nothing to nobody else? He said, he belongs to all of us. He don't just belong to you. I'm trying to figure that out. So all of a sudden, he had a bad game. Terrell did. And this coach said, you got to get his ass to play better. I said, whoa. I said, we got to get his to play better. But it's funny how, when he's playing good, he belongs to everybody. And when he's playing bad, he belongs to you.
There you go.
So, but those are things that happen, Octavius. But the game itself, man, and that's why you don't go around harvesting that in your heart. You just let it go. And I did. I let that go. And some things you just you gotta let go, and you move on from it. But those guys had my back. I had their back. Jerry used to say, "Thank you. I'm gonna send you some stuff. It's gonna blow your mind."
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
But
And that makes me think about the fact that you had to navigate something that CEOs, VPs in corporate America, coaches in the NFL, NBA, other sports deal with on a regular basis. That is probably one of the most challenging things to deal with, managing different personalities. So as you were coaching the 49ers and coaching T.O., and you had Jerry, you had other great athletes on that team, there's a dynamic that you face day in and day out. How did you manage that as it related to understanding their personality and also being self-aware of your personality and how to coach them appropriately? Well,
and that's another good question. And you heard the expression, you don't coach them all the same. They're all different. And so this is what I would do sometimes, Octavius. Jerry, for instance, when he did something bad or whatever, I would be in there and watching film with the team, and he did something poorly. Just run it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And then Jerry would say, hey, coach, I should have probably worked inside a little bit more, shouldn't I? Yeah, you should have. Yeah. Okay. Hey, Jerry, today I'm going to get on your butt for doing this, just so you know. So when they hear me getting on Jerry, those other guys, they say, oh, crap, he getting on Jerry. Okay.
Right.
We'd be in practice, Octavius, doing drills. And all of a sudden, and it's not going the way I think it should be going. And I just look at Jerry. And Jerry would say, hey, guys, let's pick this. Let's go. Let's pick this up.
Right.
Because he knew just by the look I gave him and my demeanor. But I asked Terrell Owens one time in a meeting, I said, if that guy jumps off the building, you going to jump off the building? He said, yes, sir. I said, that guy, Robert Bank, you know Robert Bank? He said, yes, sir. I asked him something else. And he said, yes, sir. And the room just fell out laughing. But I was trying to get to the point to tell Terrell, you have to be your own man. You have to be your own man. And then if you remember the football game in 2000, they played the Dallas Cowboys. And he scored a touchdown. And he stood on the star. And George Tigg hit him, knocked him off. But in the interview that night, they said, why'd you stand on that star? And he said, my coach, Larry Kirksey, told me to be my own man. Now, I had left and gone on to Texas A&M, but I should tell him all the time, be your own man. And so that's what I was trying to tell him early on in his career. He was trying to do too much. Yeah. Right. I've coached guys, Octavius, that it's got too much on their plate. And I say, you got steak, you got lobster, you got turkey, you got chicken, mashed potatoes, greens, sweet potato pie. You're trying to do too much.
Right.
Focus. And right now, that's the hardest thing for a lot of people to do in this world today, it's because of, TikTok and Instagram and all that other stuff that's going on in the world. And it's hard to focus, to get guys to focus. And because of that, and until these guys realize that they got to focus just like they work on their bodies,
Right.
Mentally and physically, if you're going to be the best, you can't, like that question you asked me earlier, how do you handle different people? Well, it's the same thing in focusing, there's so much out there. You got to stay aligned and understand, where you're trying to get to, where you're trying to go. And in this world today, that is really, really hard to do.
Coach, I coach C-suite executives on focus because there's so much interference. I tell them there's external interference and internal interference that's preventing us from being able to focus on the task at hand. And a lot of the interference is interference that we bring upon ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Well, like I said, I'm in charge of this group. Mm-hmm. This is my group. I'm not going to coach a quarterback, and I might say, hey, if he asks me something, I may give him some advice. But off the field, if that DB played poorly, I'm going to encourage him to come back and go to work. If I see that tight end do something I think he'd do a little bit better, I'm going to mention it to him. But even though I don't coach him, so I think that there's room for that. But some coaches don't want you talking to their players. Well, it's not that you're trying to coach them; you're just trying to help them, and that's what I've always done. Even though I didn't coach you, I would always encourage those guys. So
exactly, as a coach, whether it be on the collegiate level or in a National Football League, there's a need to relocate, move, because a lot of the opportunities will present themselves not internally within the team that you're currently coaching on. How did you manage work-life balance and navigate through some of those moves, whether during your time as a collegiate coach or NFL?
Well, I tell you, I've been married 45 years to the same woman.
Mm-hmm. A wonderful one at that, because I still remember her till this day.
The same woman. And she's as beautiful today inside as she was the day I married her. I mean, but I couldn't have done the things I've done. I couldn't have navigated and if it wasn't for her. Because when I left home, mm-hmm. When you came to Florida, I had in '86, right?
Yes.
When you came to Florida in '86, I had a 1-year-old son. That son is now 39 years old, and he is the director of college scouting for the Carolina Panthers now. So my daughter's in computer graphics, she's 42 now. So they were 1 and 4 when you met them.
I remember.
Okay. So I moved them about 17 times. Mm-hmm. 17 times. She sold a bunch of houses. And I never worried about home, not one time. Because if I worried about home, I couldn't have done the job I was trying to do and to try to, maneuver. And but it takes it takes two. It takes two. And because of her, I've been able to do the things I've done. And not look back, not worry about home. And sometimes even today, I coached in USFL for 2 years and won the championships there. Mm-hmm. And I decided not to go back last year. And so she's saying, "Aren't you playing golf today? Don't you have somewhere to go? I mean, you got to get out of here. I mean, this is my time. She used to her time, So, and I respect that. So I might have to just go out and just, meet a guy for lunch just to get out of the house. But I moved her 17 times. And I can't thank her enough for what she did for me, because I couldn't have done the things I've done if it wasn't for her.
Absolutely. I don't like to say behind. I prefer to say beside every great man is an even better woman. So you have a special one. So I'm quite sure the impact that she made on you and being able to allow you to do the things that you did within that coaching arena was special.
Well, I appreciate it, but you remember what God said when he made man.
Mhm.
Then he turned around, he said, I can do better than that, so he made woman. So, hey, that's how she came to be. He said, I can do better than him. So he made a woman. So, hey, and I believe that. Behind every great man, there's an even better woman. Ain't no doubt about that.
And coach, you went on to coach other great athletes like Jimmy Smith, Andre Johnson. When you think about all of these great athletes you've coached, what is it that it truly means to you as you sit back now, retired, if you decide not to coach again? What comes to mind when you reflect on the experiences and how you touch those athletes' lives on and off the field?
Well, again, they were a part of me when I was a part of them. And it meant the world to me to be able to have the opportunity to coach those young men. And I often try to coach them the way I would have want to be coached if I was a player, the way I wanted my son to be coached,
Mhm.
my cousin, my nephew, I mean, my friend. And and every athlete wants to be coached. You know that. Even in your business, the people under you, uh, you're only good as the people you have working underneath you. So you got to coach them so they can have some success.
Right.
Because if they have success, you have even greater success. Uh, everybody has a tree, a coaching tree, as they say.
Mhm.
And I've coached some young guys, some young coaches, and they're doing well. But what I've done, Bill Walsh did this, but I was doing it already, Octavius. So I don't know if you remember this or not. Before you came to the University of Florida, I showed you a highlight tape of all the great running backs.
Oh, yes, I remember.
So when I went to San Francisco 49ers, Bill Walsh said to Steve Mariucci, you need to have your coaches make a drill tape. So when those coaches leave, a new coach can look at that drill tape and know exactly what to do to have an ideal and have some success. Well, that tape has been around the world and back again. And everybody that sees it say, wow, because what I tell you this, I've written out the drill, I've written out the route, I've drawn up the route. And then when you read it, you look at it, you click a little button and you see it.
Mhm.
So when you think about it, they said, I've always been a demonstrator. Even when running backs, I tried to demonstrate. But I was running routes till I was 63, trying to anyway. And Bill Walsh said, if the coach can't demonstrate it, find somebody that can. So with that said, so if I'll go into a room and I'm going to teach and I can't demonstrate anymore, I'm 73, I can't demonstrate,
Mhm.
but I can put that film on and I can show you exactly how to get it done. And
Absolutely.
I just think this game hasn't changed, Octavius. It has not changed. It's still about running,
Mhm.
still about blocking, still about tackling, still about catching, covering,
Fundamentals,
pass
right? The
rush.
fundamentals.
It hasn't changed.
Mhm.
The fundamentals haven't changed. And they talk about the RPOs. Now, Steve Young, we were doing that back then. And every time I have to laugh because I can show you next time I see you. We were doing this at San Fran. This is nothing new.
Right.
So, but the game hasn't changed. The coaches have changed. They're younger,
Mhm.
and some of them are talented. I'm not saying all of them are as talented as, but there's some older guys that still can communicate and communicate and teach and help out. Uh, I'm not saying I'm going back into the arena, but I just know that sometimes they forget knowledge.
Right.
Everybody needs a little bit of that, but with that knowledge comes also the ability to communicate,
Mhm.
the skill set to communicate, to get it taught. So,
And as you did, communicate effectively.
absolutely. I did my best. I did my best, you know. And again, hey, I'm not gonna say, but I was always right. But most time, I would go back and find, oh, here it is right here. So,
There you go.
but
You think about families today, mothers and fathers wanting their sons and daughters to be professional athletes. What advice, before we wrap up, Coach, would you give or could you give to a parent who's coaching a youth today that will help them do it in a way in which their child will never lose the passion for the game and have fun and still be able to progress appropriately?
teach them to have this game is fun.
Mm-hmm.
I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, okay, and she's playing soccer right now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's taking, and so I come down the hill and she sees me and she runs to me. I mean, forget about the ball, but she is running. And I said, well, that's a skill set there. She can run. So, but she was having fun. But to answer your question, Octavius, make it fun. It's supposed to be fun. And when it becomes not fun anymore, then you've lost them. The young kids are supposed to have fun with it. Teach it so they can have fun. Teach it so they can have uh, respect for the game. Understand why they do what they do for the game, and the game. If we're not careful, we're going to destroy the game. I'm not going to get on that NIL, on none of that crap. But the game is still a great game. It is a tremendous game, and the athletes today are different from you. I promise you, they're different from when I came along. They're just different, and so these young coaches have got to find a way to continue to teach and communicate and make sure that they stay on top of these guys, because I did it for the love of the game. You did it for the love of the game. I mean, that's why I did it, and for all those years, and no other reason. But it's supposed to be fun.
Absolutely.
And if you don't want to have fun, then you shouldn't play. If you're going to complain about you don't have this and that, no. No two people. Now, I'm going to say this to you. There's no Jerry Rices out there. There's no Terrell Owens, no Emmitt Smith. You can only be who?
Yourself.
Octavius, you can only be yourself.
Yes.
And forget about this guy did that. Well, he did that. Don't you do that?
Right.
Be your own man. Like I told Terrell, you can't be anybody else. And sometimes, we make the mistake of not being true to who we are. And like I said, I've truly been blessed to do the things I've done. The family I have, but I didn't do it by myself. My Savior, Lord Jesus Christ, He is such a big part of my life and my family. But hey, dreams and goals. We all have them. So hey, now when that goal don't work, find another one. Absolutely. Just don't give up on that one. There's something else.
Mm-hmm.
So, but man, now we're gonna break bread soon, right?
Absolutely. I am in Charlotte. So
Hold it back up.
yes, I live in Charlotte now. So your son is there. We'll have to get together.
Well, I'm coming to Charlotte City, grandbaby, real soon.
Okay. Coach,
Real soon.
You let me know. We'll get together. I will look forward to that.
Well, do I have the right number?
I will make sure after we end this episode, I'll send you all the contact information.
Okay.
We'll connect and we'll make sure that we get together when you're going to be in Charlotte.
Okay. Do me a favor.
Yes.
2 things. They're going to have their American Football Coaches Association in Charlotte this year too.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm going to come up for that too. But make sure. Can I have your email, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'll send all that stuff
The
to
number
you.
you have on the email that I sent you is my correct mobile number as well. But I'm going to send you everything when we wrap up today.
All right, man.
I got to at
Well,
least take this opportunity to not only thank you for blessing my audience with all the gems and the stories. You're talking about some of the legends in the game, Jerry Rice, T.O. But in my eyes, you're a legend in the coaching game.
well,
But you mean so much more to me than a coach. From the day I met you in 1985 till this day, you've been someone that I admire. Like I said, I model your leadership style in the way that I go about developing relationships and communicating effectively with people. And it served me well. So I just want to thank you for all of those lessons. I won't tell people about the lessons that you should teach me off the field, but you kept me out of trouble too. Give me some good advice in Gainesville. It kept me on the straight and narrow. So I appreciate that as well. But
well,
you were someone that my parents truly cared about, that I've always cared about. And so for us to have this conversation today, after meeting in 1985, it goes a long
wow.
way. And I really hope people understand the importance of developing and maintaining relationships and understanding that regardless of what happens, when you've encountered someone who's truly a person, a man or woman of God, and they treat people with respect and they care for others, you keep in touch with that person regardless of what storms you go through, what rough waters you navigate, and you maintain that relationship. Because if we had not, we wouldn't be here today blessing each other with this conversation. So I love you, Coach. I am
I
so
love you,
grateful
man.
that you came into my life in 1985 rather, and you're here today.
Well, thank you, young man, and I love you, and God bless. And let's talk soon.
Awesome. Well, for my
Bye, man.
audience, if you've enjoyed this podcast episode, please hit like, share, and subscribe, because I promise that I will have other amazing guests